It seemed like peace had returned after illness. But within Buckingham Palace, smiles are merely a facade. Kate, the resilient duchess adored by the nation. Camilla, the queen who rose from scandal, determined not to be overshadowed by the new generation. They don't argue, they don't clash in public, but every glance, every decision in the shadows is a calculated strike. When Kate's medical records are leaked, when Camilla's family is ousted from power, who is truly winning? The answer is never simple in the British royal family. That summer in London began with a day that wasn't overly bright. Thin gray clouds drifted lazily across the sky as if hesitating before the color. The ceremonial parade marking the king's official birthday. Horse Guards Parade was awash in color, the vibrant red of the guards' uniforms, the gleaming gold of brass trumpets and the rhythmic clop of horses' hooves on the cobblestone. The crowd pressed against iron barriers, waving Union Jack flags, cheering, their eyes fixed on the balcony of Buckingham Palace where the royals were about to appear. Kate Middleton, the Princess of Wales, stepped forward to resounding applause. Her turquoise silk dress hugged her slender frame, accentuating her pale but radiant complexion. After months battling cancer, this was her first public appearance. Kate's smile was gentle like a summer breeze, soothing the nation's worries about her. Her hands rested lightly in front of her, the wide-brimmed hat swaying slightly in the wind, partially shielding her eyes. Eyes that, if you look closely, held a flicker of exhaustion mixed with resolve. Just a few steps away, Queen Camilla stood poised and calm in a beige silk coat, her elaborate feathered hat making her look like a portrait from a bygone royal era. Her eyes, sharp as a blade honed over decades, never left Kate. To the crowd, it was a fleeting glance, a mundane moment between two powerful women. But Camilla, a survivor of brutal palace intrigue, saw more than the cameras could capture. Kate did not curtsy. It was a small gesture, almost imperceptible amidst the complex royal protocols, a slight nod instead of the deferential dip tradition demanded. The crowd might attribute it to her recovering health or a moment of distraction after long hospital days. But Camilla, with the instincts of someone who had once been shunned by the world, recognized its true meaning. It's not exhaustion. She thought, her lips pursed, hiding a cold smile. It's a silent declaration. On the balcony, Kate felt Camilla's gaze piercing like a needle through thin silk. She kept her smile intact, but inside a wave of unease rose. She wasn't naive. She knew every move she made today would be scrutinized, from how she stood, how she waved to the tilt of her hat. What would the media say, that she was resilient, a symbol of hope? Or would they dig searching for a crack, a sign of weakness? She glanced at William standing beside her in his scarlet military uniform, his face stern, but his eyes full of love. He brushed her hand lightly, a subtle gesture. The antique clock in the drawing room of Clarence House chimed 11, its echo resonating through the quiet space. Camilla sat in a red velvet armchair holding a cup of Earl Grey, the steam rising faintly before her face. The crystal chandelier's light glinted off her neatly styled silver hair, but her eyes, sharp and etched with the scars of years of battles, were lost in a distant place. Outside, London was cloaked in darkness, with only the hum of cars on the Mall, like whispers of a city that never slept. She set the cup down, her gaze drifting to a photo on the table, an old snapshot of her and Charles at a hunt in Gloucestershire in the 1970s. Her smile in the picture was youthful, carefree, yet proud. It was a time before she knew she would become the woman cursed by a nation labeled the other woman, her reputation torn apart by the press. Camilla closed her eyes and memories flooded back like a deluge. Summer 1997 London, drowning in grief after Princess Diana's death. Camilla, then just a name whispered in the shadows, had to hide from public scrutiny. She recalled those days stepping out of her home in wide-brimmed hats and sunglasses like a fugitive. The press branded her Britain's most wicked woman, their articles littered with words like home wrecker, mistress, husband stealer. Crowds threw eggs at her car, sent death threats, and her children, Tom and Laura, endured taunts at school. Camilla learned to live with that pain. She mastered smiling through insults, staying silent as the world roared. Charles, the man she loved, was her only light in the darkness, but even he couldn't shield her from the storm of public hatred. "Be patient, Milla," he'd said, his voice low and anguished. "Time will change things." and she waited decade after decade, step by step, to stand behind the throne. The 2005 wedding was her first victory, but even as Queen Diana's shadow haunted her, the public forgave, but they never truly loved. Camilla opened her eyes, her gaze turning icy. She wasn't weak. She had built her own empire within the palace with loyal allies and relationships cultivated over decades. But then came Kate, the small-town girl with the perfect smile who achieved what Camilla never could, winning the public's heart in mere years. Meanwhile, at Anmer Hall, Kate sat in the warm glow of her reading room, the firelight dancing across oak bookshelves. In her hands was a family photo album, its pages tracing her journey from an ordinary Berkshire girl to the Princess of Wales. George, Charlotte, and Louis slept soundly upstairs, and William was out preparing for a charity event. Tonight, Kate craved a moment of stillness, but her mind wandered to the past. She remembered meeting William at St. Andrews, a student with simple dreams. She recalled the days hounded by the press, dubbed Weighty Katie, for enduring years of uncertainty with William. But Kate never complained. She learned to smile for the cameras, to answer interviews with grace, to turn every appearance into a chance to prove her worth. When she and William got engaged in 2010, the nation embraced her as a modern princess. Youthful, approachable, perfect. Kate turned to a page showing her in her wedding dress, beaming beside William. The public loved her not just for her looks, but for the fresh air she brought to the monarchy, sincerity, resilience, the image of an ideal mother and wife. But Kate wasn't naive. She knew that in the palace, public adoration was a double-edged sword. Today they cheered, tomorrow they could turn. Back at Clarence's house, Camilla stood walking to the window overlooking the darkened garden. She thought of Kate, how swiftly she became the hope of the monarchy. Just a few years, while Camilla took decades to be accepted. Bitterness welled within her, not from jealousy, but from a harsh truth. Though she was the king's wife, though she wore the crown to the public, Kate was the ideal royal. She recalled the moment at Trooping the Color, Kate's nod instead of a curtsy. It wasn't careless. It was the mark of a woman who knew her power, quietly setting boundaries. Camilla pursed her lips, her hand tightening on the silk curtain. She had fought her whole life to stand here, and she wouldn't let anyone, not even Kate Middleton, push her into the shadows. In the reading room at Anmer Hall, Kate closed the album, her eyes calm but resolute. She knew Camilla was watching, judging. She knew there was no room for naivety in the palace. But Kate wasn't afraid. She had come far from the small-town girl, and she wouldn't stop. Not for the crown, but for her family, for William, for herself. Two women, two journeys, one throne. Their war wasn't fought with swords, but with glances, smiles, and silent moves. Yet both understood in the palace only one could stand at the pinnacle. A fine drizzle fell on London's cobblestone streets, shrouding Clarence's house in a misty haze. In the main drawing room, the fire crackled softly, but it couldn't dispel the chill seeping into Camilla's heart. She sat in a green velvet armchair, clutching a newspaper, its bold headline glaring. Duke of Cornwall, overhauls duchy management, Annabel Elliot removed. The words were like needles piercing the pride she had built over decades. Camilla set the paper down, her gaze sweeping the room. Oil paintings, antique porcelain vases, and a small photo on the table, her and her younger sister Annabel, beaming at a garden party in Wiltshire years ago. Annabel, the sister who always stood by her, who quietly managed design projects for the Duchy of Cornwall, was now cast aside. Not for lack of skill, but because of a ruthless move by William. And Camilla knew Kate's shadow loomed behind it. That morning in an office at Kensington Palace, William had signed the official decision. The meeting with the Duchy of Cornwall's advisors was brief but tense. "We need a new modern team," William said, his voice calm but firm. The Duchy must reflect a 21st century vision. Those present nodded, none daring to question Annabel Elliot, a decades-long fixture known to all as the Queen's sister. Kate sat beside William, silent, her pale gray silk dress lending her an air of elegant detachment. She said nothing, didn't need to. Her role in this decision wasn't in words but in her presence. A reminder that she was the future of the monarchy, and she backed her husband even if it meant crossing Camilla's family. As William signed the document, Kate gave him a fleeting glance, a subtle smile that said she was with him. But inside, Kate wasn't without turmoil. She knew this decision would have consequences. Camilla wasn't one to accept challenges lightly, and Annabel wasn't just an employee. She was family, a piece of the power network Camilla had carefully constructed. Kate had weighed it, lost sleep over it, but she agreed with William to shape the monarchy's future. They had to clear out old influences, even if it hurt the Queen. That afternoon at Clarence's house, Camilla called for a rare tea. Just 3 attendees, her Kate, and a meticulously set table with scones and a Wedgwood teapot. No servants, no advisors, just the 2 women, and a tension hanging in the air like the scent of Earl Grey. Light from the window filtered through raindrops on the glass, casting shimmering streaks across Camilla's face. "You've heard about Annabelle, I presume," Camilla began, her voice soft but sharp, like a blade wrapped in velvet. She lifted her teacup, her eyes never leaving Kate. "A surprising decision, wouldn't you say?" Kate set her teacup down, her movement slow, almost calculated. She met Camilla's gaze, her eyes steady, cold as a frozen lake. "William believes the duchy needs a new direction," she replied, her tone even betraying no emotion. "I think it's a reasonable step." Camilla smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "Reasonable," she echoed, as if tasting the word. "I see. But you know, Catherine, in the palace, nothing is merely reasonable. Every decision is a message." She leaned forward, her voice dropping. "And I wonder whose message is this?" Kate didn't answer immediately. She felt the weight of the question like a blade at her throat. In that moment, she recalled her early days in the royal family, a small-town girl, fumbling through protocols and probing stares. But she had learned to stand firm, to face people like Camilla, those who never showed weakness. "I say nothing," Kate replied, her voice soft but cutting. "But I know what's happening." Her words were like a stone dropped into a still pond. Camilla's grip on her teacup tightened, her ringed fingers trembling slightly. She wanted to say something to tear through Kate's composed mask, but she restrained herself. Instead, she smiled again, colder this time, as if memorizing the moment. "I've always admired your intelligence, Catherine," she said, her voice sweet but laced with menace. "But be careful. In this game, not everyone survives." As Kate left Clarence's house, the rain had stopped, but the chill clung to her. In the car, she stared out the window, her gaze distant. She knew she had crossed a line one she couldn't uncross. Camilla wouldn't forgive, and Annabelle was just the beginning. But Kate didn't regret it. She had chosen to stand with William, and if that meant facing Camilla, she was ready. At Clarence's house, Camilla stood alone in the drawing room, still clutching the now-cold teacup. She looked out the window where Kate's car had just vanished. "Don't think I'll let this go, Catherine," she whispered, her voice so low only she could hear. The fire still burned in the hearth, but its light couldn't dispel the darkness growing in her heart. October rain draped London in a gray veil, as if the city shared the gloom of the tabloids' sensational headlines. In the sterile white corridors of King Edward VII Hospital, the scent of antiseptic mingled with the hurried footsteps of nurses. Kate Middleton, Princess of Wales, sat on a leather chair in a private waiting room, her gaze vacant, fixed on the floor. Her dark green wool coat hid her frail frame, but it couldn't conceal the deep hurt etched on her face. Just hours earlier, the world had learned what she'd fought to keep. Private details of her medical records, from test results to her days battling cancer, had been leaked. The tabloids pounced with cruel headlines like "Princess Kate, Health Secrets Exposed," and "Royal Chaos Over Medical Leak." Social media buzzed with speculation, from sympathetic comments to vicious conspiracy theories. Buckingham Palace issued a swift statement, vowing to investigate thoroughly and calling the breach a grave violation. But to Kate, those words were salt in an open wound. She felt exposed, as if the world was dissecting every corner of her body and soul. William sat beside her, his hand gripping hers tightly, his face flushed with anger. "Who dared do this?" he growled, his voice low, meant only for her. "I'll make them pay, Kate, I swear." She nodded, but inside she wasn't sure she had the strength to believe in justice. She just wanted to retreat, to protect what little privacy remained, a luxury the royal family rarely granted. Late that afternoon, the hospital corridors grew quiet, with only the hum of air conditioning breaking the silence. Kate stood alone by a window, gazing at a small, rain-soaked garden. She was trying to steady herself, to hold back tears threatening to spill. Then soft footsteps approached from behind. She turned, her heart tightening as she saw Camilla. The Queen approached, composed in a silver-gray silk coat, her silver hair neatly styled. Her eyes, as always, were sharp yet unreadable. Catherine Camilla said, her voice low and soft, almost empathetic. "I heard about what happened. It's dreadful." She paused, placing a hand on Kate's shoulder, a light touch that made Kate stiffen. "I've been hunted by them too, you know. The press, the public, they never relent." Kate studied Camilla, searching for truth in her eyes. Camilla's words sounded like comfort, a shared bond from someone who'd endured similar wounds. But in the depths of her gaze, Kate caught a strange glint. Not quite empathy, not quite triumph, but something more complex, as if Camilla was weighing Kate's every reaction. "Thank you," Kate replied, her voice calm but cold. "I'll get through this." Camilla smiled faintly and withdrew her hand. "I believe you will, Catherine," she said, her tone still sweet. "But be careful. In the palace, enemies are often closer than you think." She tilted her head slightly as if in farewell and walked away, leaving Kate with a creeping sense of unease. Alone again, Kate stood still, her hand clutching the edge of her coat. She had no proof, nothing but intuition, the instinct that had kept her afloat in the palace all these years. But she couldn't shake the thought that Camilla was involved. The leak was too precise, too cruel, like a calculated strike to weaken her. Camilla, who'd been hounded by the press herself, knew the power of a scandal. And Camilla, who'd faced her at that tea in Clarence House, wasn't one to stand idly by when challenged. Winter crept into London, bringing biting winds and the pale light of a sun hidden behind thick clouds. In her office at Kensington Palace, Kate Middleton sat at an oak desk, her eyes scanning a stack of invitations and a packed schedule. The desk lamp illuminated her face, highlighting her delicate features, but also revealing traces of fatigue from the medical leak aftermath. Before her sat a cold cup of chamomile tea, and beside it, her phone, its screen lit with a message from an advisor. "Princess, we've identified some leads in the leak. Should we pursue further?" Kate closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. The image of Camilla in the hospital corridor flashed in her mind. The gentle pat on her shoulder, the unreadable eyes, the words that seemed comforting yet laced with subtext. Suspicion of Camilla's involvement gnawed at her, but Kate knew pursuing it would drag her into a deeper quagmire. She'd face questions, probing stares, and worse, she'd let Camilla see her pain. No, she couldn't allow that. Not now, when she stood on the edge of a silent war. No further investigation. She typed back, her fingers swift, but her inner voice resolute. "Focus on upcoming events. We have work to do." She set the phone down, stood and looked out the window where bare branches swayed in the wind. Kate had decided she wouldn't let the leak define her. She would rise not by retaliating, but by shining, as a princess, a mother, and a royal icon. In the weeks that followed, Kate threw herself into her duties with an almost unstoppable energy. She attended charity events, from meeting children at Great Ormond Street Hospital to education workshops in Birmingham. Each appearance was marked by a carefully chosen dress, soft blue or vibrant crimson, a declaration that she remained strong, unbowed. She knelt to talk with children, listened to struggling family stories, and when she smiled, the world seemed to brighten with her. At the opening of a mental health support center in Manchester, Kate addressed the crowd, her voice warm yet powerful. "We cannot let hardships define us," she said, her eyes sweeping over hundreds of attentive faces. "We are defined by how we rise and carry on." The applause was deafening, and reporters scrambled to capture every word. The next day, headlines sang her praises. Princess Kate, the monarchy's shining hope. Kate Middleton, a symbol of resilience. Images of her hugging a child flooded social media, with comments lauding her. "She's our future." But Kate knew that behind the adulation, a pair of eyes was watching. Camilla, though absent from these events, was ever present. In the papers, in palace whispers, in the weight of her meaningful silence. Kate refused to be drawn into a game of vengeance, but she ensured each step she took was a reminder she wasn't weak, and she wouldn't let Camilla or anyone push her out of the light. Meanwhile, Camilla carried on with the composure honed over decades. She attended art exhibitions, heritage preservation events, and diplomatic dinners. Her pearl silk coats and deep teal gowns made her look like a classic royal portrait, and her smile, polite, regal, hid any inner turmoil. She shook hands, conversed, And when asked about her work, she replied with quiet confidence, "The monarchy is a duty, and I strive to fulfill mine." But the press wouldn't let her rest. Though articles praised her dedication, they never failed to dredge up her past. Queen Camilla, from third wheel to royal pillar. One headline read as if her transformation was mere clickbait. Camilla and Diana's legacy. Another dug up paired with old photos from the 1990s when the public called her a homewrecker. Each word was a cut, but Camilla had learned to endure. She read the articles, smiled, and set them aside. But inside, bitterness simmered. At a formal dinner at Buckingham Palace where crystal chandeliers lit up glittering gowns and tailored suits, Kate and Camilla crossed paths again. The room buzzed with piano music and laughter, but when the two women faced each other, the air thickened. Kate, in a sapphire silk gown, smiled gently, but her eyes were sharp as if saying, "You can't break me." Camilla, in a burgundy velvet dress, responded with a polite nod, her eyes glinting with a spark of defiance. "You're doing wonderfully," Catherine Camilla said, her voice low and sweet, but with an edge only Kate could detect. "The public adores you. I must admit you know how to captivate them." Kate tilted her head, her smile unwavering. "I'm just doing what needs to be done, ma'am," she replied, her voice soft but firm. "The monarchy needs those who believe in the future, and I want to be part of that." Her words, though gentle, were a declaration, not just to Camilla, but to the entire palace. Camilla smiled, but her grip on her wineglass tightened. "The future," she repeated as if savoring the word. "Indeed. But don't forget, Catherine, the future is built on the sacrifices of the past." She raised her glass as if toasting, then turned away, leaving Kate with a familiar sense of unease. Beyond the palace, London lay in darkness, but the street lights flickered like glimmers of hope, or warnings, in the silent war between two women. Spring 2025 bathed London in soft light, but within the marble corridors of Buckingham Palace, the atmosphere was heavy, like a storm waiting to break. King Charles III, once a symbol of steadfastness, now appeared, with a slow gait, a gaunt face, and eyes clouded by months of declining health. Doctors whispered of persistent fatigue, canceled meetings, and days he couldn't leave Sandringham. The royal family, despite efforts to conceal it, couldn't stop the murmurs from spreading beyond the palace. The king was fading, and the throne was quietly shifting. William, Prince of Wales, stepped into a role he'd prepared for his entire life. Meetings with ministers, international tours, and major speeches now bore his name. He faced the public with a stern yet powerful presence, his tailored suits and steady voice a promise that the monarchy remained strong. Beside him, Kate Middleton strode confidently, her emerald or crimson silk dresses highlighting the radiant smile the world adored. She wasn't just a wife. She was a partner, an icon, the future of the monarchy. At a national event in Westminster Hall, where world leaders gathered to celebrate a trade agreement, Kate and William shone as a power couple. Kate shook hands with ambassadors, conversed fluently in French with a Parisian official, and as she stood beside William for photos, her eyes sparkled with confidence. The crowd applauded, cameras flashed, and the press spared no praise. William and Kate, the couple leading the monarchy forward. But in that dazzling light, another figure quietly receded. Camilla the Queen stood at the far end of the hall, her silver gray silk coat and elegant hat, making her look like a classic royal portrait. She smiled at guests, nodded when asked about heritage projects, but her eyes couldn't leave Kate and William. Her presence, though still dignified, now carried a different tone, like a star dimming before the brilliance of a new generation. Charles, her anchor, was no longer there to bolster her position. He remained at Sandringham, leaving Camilla to face a shifting palace alone. The press began to speculate with unsparing headlines. Queen Camilla, out of time, or still powerful? An article in the Times questioned whether Camilla, who'd fought to claim her crown, was losing influence as William and Kate took center stage. Kate Middleton, the public's future queen. Another declared, paired with a photo of Kate speaking with a child at a charity event. The praise for Kate was like a knife slicing into Camilla's pride, who had sacrificed her life to stand here, only to find herself pushed into the shadows. Camilla maintained a perfect smile for the cameras. At a library opening in Oxford, she cut the ribbon, chatted with scholars, and when the cameras panned to her, she smiled, the smile of someone skilled at hiding wounds. That evening at Clarence's house, Camilla stood alone in the drawing room, the firelight dancing across the oil paintings on the walls. The door was firmly shut, and in the stillness, she let her mask fall. She gripped a glass of red wine, her ringed fingers clenching so tightly her knuckles whitened. Before her was a newspaper, its front page featuring Kate and William at Westminster Hall, with the headline, "The New Monarchy, William and Kate take the lead." Camilla gritted her teeth, her breathing heavy with suppressed rage. "Don't think I'll surrender so easily, Catherine," she said, her voice so low only she could hear. The name Catherine carried a faint scorn like a curse. Inside Buckingham Palace's long corridors, the air was thick with guarded secrets. Closed-door meetings among royal advisors grew more frequent, whispers about King Charles III's health echoing in oak-paneled rooms. Though the press and public knew only official statements, that the king was resting at Sandringham, within the palace a power transition had quietly begun. William, Prince of Wales, was now the heart of every major decision. He chaired meetings with ministers, approved plans for national events, and even led negotiations with major charities. His presence in finely tailored suits exuded a newfound confidence, not just an heir, but a leader shaping the monarchy's future. Advisors, from seasoned aides to young officials, began to regard him with fresh respect. "He's ready," one advisor whispered to a colleague in the hallway. "And the princess? She is too." Kate Middleton moved beside William with a resolve forged through years in the palace. She didn't just attend events with her perfect smile and elegant dresses, soft blue or vivid crimson, but joined strategic meetings offering insights on charity projects and education initiatives. Within the palace, everything was arranged with the precision of a chessboard. Protocols, speeches, even seating arrangements at events were adjusted to highlight William and Kate. The public outside remained unaware, but in those private rooms, the monarchy was preparing for a new reign. Camilla, the queen, watched it all from the sidelines. She saw how advisors bowed slightly when speaking to Kate, how reporters focused their lenses on her, and how William led with an ease Charles, even in his healthiest days, rarely matched. Camilla wasn't naive. She knew her power was fading, not because she was weakening, but because time and the public had chosen a new generation. Charles, her foundation, was now a faint shadow, confined by his failing health. Without him, Camilla stood alone, and for the first time in years, she felt powerlessness creeping into her heart. But she never let it show. Never. Instead, she smiled, nodded, and waited. For Camilla knew that in the palace, opportunities came to the patient. That evening, a small dinner was held at Clarence's house, reserved for royals and a few close guests. The crystal chandelier bathed the room in light, making the wine glasses and evening gowns sparkle. A violin played softly, blending with laughter and polite conversation. But beneath the warm atmosphere, an invisible tension simmered. Kate, in a silver silk gown, stood beside William, discussing environmental initiatives with a diplomat. Her smile was gentle, but her eyes were sharp, as if aware of every glance in the room. Camilla, in a deep purple velvet dress, glided through the crowd with the grace of someone who'd mastered such stages. But when the two women met near the buffet table, time seemed to slow. They faced each other mere steps apart. Kate smiled, the perfect smile she'd honed through countless events. Camilla mirrored her smile calm but tinged with an elusive edge. They shook hands, a light, almost ceremonial gesture. But in that moment, both felt its weight, like two duelists touching swords before a fight. "You look radiant tonight," Camilla said, her voice low and sweet, but with a trace of coldness. "The whole world is watching you and William. Truly admirable." Kate tilted her head, her smile steady. "Thank you," she replied, her voice soft but firm. "We're just trying to do our best for the monarchy and the country." Camilla smiled, but her eyes locked onto Kate, as if searching for a flaw. "Oh, I have no doubt of that," she said, her voice dropping, almost a whisper. "But remember, Catherine, the crown may pass from hand to hand. But in the monarchy, no one truly lets go of power." Her words were like a stone dropped into a still pond. Kate felt their weight, a warning cloaked in silk. She met Camilla's gaze, her eyes unwavering, but inside a familiar unease stirred. She knew Camilla wasn't just talking about the crown. She was speaking of the war they'd been waging silently for years, a war with no absolute victor. "I'll keep that in mind," Kate replied, her voice calm but sharp. "But I believe in the monarchy, power belongs to those who build the future." She tilted her head slightly as if in farewell and walked away, leaving Camilla with a cold smile and a smoldering anger. After the dinner, Kate sat in the car on the way to Animer Hall, her gaze distant out the window. Camilla's words echoed in her mind, a reminder that this war wasn't over. She held William's hand and he squeezed it as if assuring her they'd face every challenge together. But Kate knew that to protect her family, to safeguard their legacy, she had to be stronger than ever. At Clarence's house, Camilla stood alone in the drawing room, the lamplight casting shadows across her face, highlighting the lines of time and struggle. She removed her pearl necklace, placing it on the vanity, and looked into the mirror. Her eyes held not just anger, but a steely resolve. "They think I've lost," she whispered to herself, "but I'll show them, Catherine, that I still have moves to play." Beyond the palace, London lay in darkness, but within its walls the undercurrents churned, awaiting the moment they'd erupt. Hit like, share, and subscribe to follow more gripping royal stories.